Hello, Mosaic Soul. Welcome back to my studio. I've been feeling this urge to shift out of a specific identity that I've been carrying for a while that has been cultivating my garden, and going back to a metaphor that I used in a previous video that I'll link up here. And a big part of why I was allowing this machine for me is the lift machine and just doing rideshare. And the reason why I've been using it as something to like cultivate my garden is because it's one of the things that I've found over the years that I can always kind of come back to when gigs they run their course, or when, you know, I'm in between clients, or when things might not pan out the way I would hope they have panned out in certain instances. It was also sort of like my fallback plan, but also like my get extra money for extra things that I want to do thing. And it's always just been sort of my steady Betty kind of thing. But it's always been in sort of my internal back of my mind, knowing that I would want to eventually retire this. And so that's been coming up again recently. And I really want to kind of talk about it in today's video.
I'm Rachel, and I have fun doing so many things, like playing, singing, dancing, painting, filming, and many more. Cause I'm a Mosaic soul. I'm proud to be me, being bold, divine, and free.
So one of the reasons why I want to talk about it is because I feel like where I'm headed in my life is that I am still cultivating the garden, but I'm changing my feed that I'm planting in the garden. Like, one of the things of like the garden metaphor is that you want to use the right soil. If you don't have the right soil to plant whatever crops that you're trying to grow, oftentimes you will find it very hard to grow crops, right? I've just learned that from watching several different garden videos, because I've been, you know, in the back of my mind thinking eventually when I get my house and my land, I'm gonna plant my own garden. And I've also been thinking about having different other types of gardens until I get that. But anyways, doing research and studying, having the right type of soil is so super important. It's sort of the bedrock of, right, like you being able to create the type of crops that you want, right? And the point that I was making in another video was that I didn't want to abandon my established trees in my garden, which to me is how I was using Lyft as like it was an established tree that I could go pick off fruit, in terms of this was like abundance money, right? And I wanted to make sure that would never, like, I would not have to be like in feast or famine. And I still believe that. But what I'm recognizing is that if I could like shift the narrative, is that slowly, bit by bit, like I think because of my neurodivergence, and this is why it's been very challenging for me to have like traditional jobs and traditional ways of doing things. And I did a video on that a few days ago, but it just didn't resonate for me to put out. It didn't resonate. It didn't like roll off the tongue. It felt like I was in this justification mode, and I just don't like justifying my existence because I'm here doing me. So, but I think what I do want to take off of that is that I'm pivoting, and I'm really excited about recognizing that maybe the trees in my garden that I thought was cultivating this, you know, nourishment was actually slowly poisoning me. So I feel like with Lyft right now it feels like I'm ready for this new phase in my life. I'm ready for just going all in on my music and my art, and I've felt that for a while. I remember having this sort of discussion with my mom like a year ago, and feeling like I just kind of want to be retired from life, in a sense, like not necessarily that I don't want to do anything, but I want to have like an easy button life, right? Where life just feels filled with mostly like 90 to 95% of my time is dedicated to the things that I love doing, to my talents, to my skills, of which I have many, right? And so right now I'm in this phase of believing that I still think it's very important to not just cut off your branches, especially if you don't have a backup plan, especially if you don't have any way of bringing in income and all of that stuff. And I'm not planning on doing that. But I am in the transition phase of like shifting out of Lyft being my main tree or one of the many trees that I pick from, and just sort of retiring that and maybe replacing that with one of my other skill sets that I have, right? And making, you know, my talents work for me. The only thing that I find, which is really, really challenging, because I'm playing teeter-tottering right now, because on one hand, I do want to do some like psychological testing to see if I am neurodivergent, if I am autistic or do have ADHD, because if I do, that would explain some of the things and the difficulties that I've had throughout my life and why certain things have been harder for me than other people. Just like sensitivity to things and just things that I don't know, like I can't bear certain things. And like now that I'm getting older, it's almost like to this point where my body is giving me signals, and I'm always constantly in this like teeter-tottering from burnout. And at first I thought it was because of sleep deprivation, and it could very well be that, but I don't think, because I have been getting more regular sleep normally, but I think it's actually because of hypersensitivity as well, and sensitivity to noise, like other things. I don't know. If you're ever curious about neurodivergence, or specifically what I'm self-diagnosing myself as ADHD, I think it has a lot to do with that. So there's that. I do want to get testing, but that's not like priority number one, because it is quite costly to get tested, to find out if you do have, this neurospiciness, right? And then there's the other side of me that's like recognizing that, well, from a spiritual perspective, if you're complete with an experience, then you're just complete with it. Like, you don't continue to force feed yourself dinner from when your stomach is full, right? And so that's kind of how I feel with Lyft, right? I feel very complete with that experience. I feel like I'm ready for new adventures. I'm ready for my talents and skills. And let me take that back, because my talents and skills of like speaking life into people, counseling, mentoring, sharing different insights and speaking to thousands of people at this point has been used. So I can't say that my gifts weren't used, but I'm kind of like burnt out from that in various degrees, because I'm like, I want to continue to be in this hermit mode, which is I have been, but not in a hermit mode where I'm not sharing my gifts, but a hermit mode in terms of continuing to focus more of my time, effort, and attention on my artistry, continuing to focus my time, effort, and energy on, possibly eventually when I recover, is to hold space for other people and their artistry, and doing possible collaborations down the line, and continuing to release art and music and things of that nature on a bigger scale, in a bigger way that I think is more impactful, and really establishing more of the things that I already know what my message is. I'm very, very clear on the types of messages that I want to deliver, but I need more time, space, and energy, and like spaciousness to just breathe and allow these ideas to like formulate, and not just formulate, but like come out in the form of content, come out in the form of not even content, come out in the form of artistry, like music, songwriting, writing, poetry, art, visual art, and things of that nature. I have many multidisciplinary artist ideas that I'm sitting on that I just need more time, effort, and energy to put towards, right? And so that's why I have been really thinking about shifting, right? And so my realization recently was that like patience is not the same thing as maintaining everything, right? So I've been closely looking at my finances, time, energy, and physical capacity over the last few months. And like I said in my last video, this has been one of the most challenging years for me. And it's mostly because of my physical capacity, my energy. I've been manifesting weird like physical health issues that I've never really had. And for someone who is very health conscious, I'm realizing that my body is sending me signals, right? Sending me signals that it's time to change. Things in my environment need to change. My lifestyle needs to change, and things of that nature. And so I've realized that I've been trying to water every crop at once, right? Trying to simultaneously balance all of these things that I'm doing at once, and I don't have the capacity for that. And also I'm realizing that sometimes the things that I'm investing in are the things that I'm investing my time, effort, and energy actually creating the life that I actually want. And for me, even just like for me, only doing something like, a part-time gig with Lyft, which is allowing me to more than cover my bills and things of that nature, is still too much for me. You know what I mean? So some things, what I'm realizing is certain things were really good for a season, but now it's time for me to retire that crop because it's no longer nourishing me in the way that it needs to, right? And so I can start to take more of my energy and return that energy towards this new set of crops that's more nourishing towards my next season, Yeah, and so for me, like Lyft feels like it's become like this crop that has become invasive, right? And so it's like Lyft originally served the purpose of like gave me flexible income when when I needed it, right? In terms of, you know, everything that I just mentioned. It was supposed to fund the garden at one point, and I think that was the mistake that I did, is that I started depending on it to fund the garden rather than continuing to use it as a supplemental income thing. And I think because my body, and I'm super sensitive to like so many things when it comes to driving and things of that nature, I've like developed almost like motion sickness, which is weird because I've never had motion sickness ever. So it's certain things that signals that my body is just like letting me know that it's time to like retire and like move into allowing my other gifts to start working for me and start using and like continue to allow Lyft to be like supplemental income and eventually just walk away from it completely. And one of the reasons why I'm excited about this is because I was doing some like financial, you know, budgeting and looking at my finances and just kind of seeing like where I want my money to go, where I'm allocating my funds. And a lot of like a good 40 to 50% of my income is going towards investments, right? Like I talked about in another video, where I was talking about like the camera that I'm shooting on right now. That's an investment that I'm still paying off of. Like my iPhone, I'm still paying off on that. Like my printer, I just paid off, right? Investments that I made into my business and into growing as an artist so that I could be able to have the materials to grow like as an artist online, and eventually continuing to get more out into my environment and eventually traveling more, right? And so like, I felt like if I spend my available energy earning money so I can finance creativity, then I have no energy left to create. And coming from someone from a background where I've made lots of money in my utilizing my creative endeavors, it's not like any of my talents and skills I've never made money on. I have no proof of concept. I have many proofs of concepts, and you know, to the thousands, you know what I mean? I started realizing that I need to stop putting Lyft as like my main funding for my garden, right? Like it doesn't need to fund my garden when I have all these other skills and talents that are more in alignment with my passion, that doesn't feel so draining, that I could implore to continue to fund my garden while I'm still building my businesses. You see what I'm saying? And so that's sort of the financial awakening, was that I started actually looking at my numbers, right? And seeing what I could actually move around if I made some decisions that would allow me to eliminate a lot of these, or like pay off a lot of these investments, so that I could dramatically really allow myself to live off of less while still experiencing more, if that makes sense. And so like, if like let's say if 50%, and I haven't actually done the percentage, but let's say if 50% of my income is towards investments, right? Like paying off loans that I've taken out for different things, products and things in my business, things that I want to use for my business to grow my business and things of that nature, like a printer, ink, packaging materials, my cameras, like all of these things, right? My, you know, art program that I'm still taking and stuff like that. When I pay off these things and I can pay those down with some other like creative stuff behind the scenes, I really don't want to reveal it because that's my own personal information that I don't really want to share on the internet. But I realized that I can really be creative by like living on less and needing less while actually living more, like embodying more and having more wealth in terms of not only time, effort, and energy, but also money as well. So it helped me, like this this financial awakening that I've been having recently is helping me realize that what expenses are truly supporting my life and the one that I want to continue to move towards living, right? So which expenses are supporting an identity, a habit, an obligation, or investment that I'm barely using, or that I could possibly pay off quicker than what I have been already, right? And so financial freedom for me is starting to look less like I need to make six figures, or, you know, I need to make this amount of money, you know, I need to be a millionaire or whatever. And not to say that those things aren't things that I don't want, but it's not necessarily I don't know how to explain it. The pinnacle of success isn't necessarily the dollar amount anymore, as much as it's how can I live in alignment with my soul that allows my freedom of expression to be fully supported, right? And so that can look like a dollar number, and I feel like I will be doing more like personal excavation of what those dollar numbers might look like. But right now, having done some of the financial excavation in my own life and realizing that, oh, I can live on less. I could, once I get rid of and pay off these things and, you know, pay off that investment and things of that nature, now I have like more breathing room to actually invest back into my business, invest more time, effort, and energy, because I'm not worried about those things that I've, you know, made commitments to, that they're now paid off. And now I can like really put all my time, effort, and energy into the things and allow some of my other gifts to support me, you know what I mean? And so it's like, instead of like thinking that make six figures as a goal, it's like, how inexpensive can I make the life that I genuinely want? And it's not even necessarily inexpensive as much as it's like, it is how can I live on less, but like the less isn't like, I don't know how to explain this. It's not like poverty, and there's nothing wrong with poverty either. So, but it's not like that. It's sort of just like, because I feel like I live a very rich life, even though I live on a lot less than I think the average person lives on. I feel I live like a very rich life. I have like very expensive like art materials, like it's almost like $20 per tube kind of thing. I have like, you know, all this stuff that I am utilizing that is very, you know, costly, but I am investing my time, effort, and energy into being able to I want to start investing my time, effort, and energy in being able to utilize the things that I've already made investments in, if that makes sense. And so now I'm like in this stage of like reallocating my resources towards crops that I actually want, like my art, my music, right? My creative entrepreneurship, my spiritual and educational work on my other channel, Divine Earth School, and rest and health, you know, and eventually more travel and lived experience and you know, time to study, practice, rest, spaciousness, dance, perform, explore, you know, write, create, and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really excited about this new chapter. And so the question that's arising for me now that I'm still uncovering and unpacking right now is, which parts of my life deserve my water, sunlight, money, and energy right now, right? Which parts of my life actually deserve those? And how can I like stop pouring my water and energy into things that aren't nourishing me anymore? They're actually depleting me, you know, especially with my talents and skill sets, you know? And so for me right now, I'm realizing that uprooting is not failure. I've actually never been someone, I've always been sort of a fly by the seat of my pants type of person up until, you know, a certain point in my life. And then I started becoming more stable and more like grounded and trying to like, you know, do the right thing by having the right things in place. And I realized that just really goes against my creative nature and like opportunities. Like I remember, you know, like people would ask me like, how did you get that opportunity? How did you find that gig? How did you end up with meeting this person? And I was just like, oh, I was just following my highest excitement and I was just doing things and they would just land in my lap. And I feel like because I've been living so much in like, I had put so much pressure on Lyft to fund the garden, I inadvertently cut off my excitement and passion, and inadvertently started living in bouts of fear and scarcity that was cutting off my ability to open gateways and doorways of more money flowing in a way that continues to support my existence, you know? And as someone who like owns my own house, owns my own car and all of those things, I don't necessarily have to worry about like where I'm going to lay my head at night, thank God, like, you know, and things of that nature. But it's like, now I'm ready for a new chapter in my life. You know what I mean? And, I find that like when you're ready to uproot whatever thing that you're placing so much like emphasis on needing to feed yourself, is like, you got to recognize that it's like not failure. And that's something that I'm realizing, is that I didn't fail at, you know, a career, or I didn't fail at something. It's just time for me to not be committed to things because abandoning them feels like failure. I don't believe in the concept of failure. Like, I'll link another video that I did up here where I did like a whole video or like little mini short film about failure. Like, I don't believe in failure. I believe in having experiences, learning from those experiences, and then moving on. I just believe in we experience life and then we move on. Like, I don't believe in the concept of a marriage failing, or I don't believe in the concept of a friendship failing or failing at a job. I feel like you did the thing. It didn't work out the way you thought it. Oh, that's information. Move on. Learn, integrate, expand and grow. Like I don't believe in failure because I feel like failure has this sort of like negative connotation to it that makes us like fearful to like live our lives, you know what I mean? And so I'm not in this state of like overly being critical of my garden, right? Because like when you think about gardeners, like they don't really morally judge themselves for pulling a plant that isn't thriving, right? Like they assess the ecosystem and they realize that discernment is a part of the devotion. They realize that if this crop is actually, you know, poisoning all the other crops, or it's like taking up most of the resources, then changing the plan or like uprooting the crop and like, you know, throwing it away or whatever is necessary is what needs to go, right? So it's like changing the plan doesn't mean that the original plan was wrong. It just means that you learned something by living it, you know what I mean? And so that's what I'm realizing in this next stage. And so I am in the like, how to say, the liminal space of about to embark on this burning the boats energy where I'm about to burn the boats of my Lyft income, but I'm going to build up to it and like make some like huge strides in paying off some of these investments that I've made into my business so that my expenses can dramatically fall down and I can have more breathing room and spaciousness to put more time, effort, and energy into my art and creativity rather than it being sort of like, oh, I get to have a little side of art or a little side of music. Now it'll be the fucking main course. You know what I mean? Which is what I'm super excited about because it's like, it's so time. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in terms of that. And also I'm realizing that like continuing to protect the old structures was actually costing me more than just changing it. You know what I mean? Like I could easily go become a voice teacher somewhere, you know. I don't think that would be as draining. I think it would be draining because I think driving in general in Atlanta at this stage in time is just very stressful on my nervous system because it's not the same as it was 8 years ago it's like it's not the same. It's just different. Like people are just way more aggressive. You have to be so vigilant all the time. It's just loud. It's too much. It's too much. And I think I'm kind of coming to completion with that right now. It's not exciting and like fun like it used to be when I first started. And I got to like really learn how to small talk. There were so many things I was learning. I was, you know, holding space for people, having so many like enlightened conversations and things of that nature with people from all different walks of life. And it really did like hold a really special place in my heart. But I think I've evolved out of that, definitely. So I'm like ready for this next phase, and it like I'm at the precipice because now my body is like giving me signals like, okay, bitch, it's time. It's time to move into something else that's more in alignment with your heart and your soul, right? And so I know that the leap is not recklessness, you know, it's actually the greater risk is continuing to pour life into something that my body is telling me that is complete. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to manifest another disease to tell me that I need to change my life. I've already done that before. I don't need to do that or experience that ever again. You know what I mean? And so I have like a completely different definition of abundance, and I've had this for quite a while, but what this experience is doing is deepening that for me. And so for me, like abundance isn't necessarily earning enormous amounts of money, although that can be an expression of abundance. Abundance for me means not necessarily abundance can mean like needing very little to sustain a life you deeply enjoy. It can look like that as well. But for me, abundance is having time, having health, having creative freedom, right? Having the ability to express oneself freely, right? Having enough money that you aren't afraid, but not structuring your entire life around earning, right? I feel like in America, we have this existence where we live in order to work, right? And that's never resonated for me. I've always been the enjoy life as much as you can. I probably give my hats off to my father for that. Definitely taught the value of enjoying your life, you know, and so I'm very much so of the mindset that we should be working in order to live, right? Not the other way around. So that I can enjoy my life, because as an artist, as a creative, as even a coach, to be able to hold space, you have to be able to live life. And if all you're doing is working, and that's where I found myself in this sort of rut the last year or so, because not only was I going through a lot emotionally, mentally, and going through my own ego death and stuff like that, and like coming into this other state of awakening, but I had kind of maintained this routine of like working, living in order to work. And I don't know how I got into that mode, because I've never been that type of person who's ever like lived in order to work. I've always been the type of person who's worked in order to live, which is why I've always been able to live on less than most people, because I've intentionally and unintentionally just not needed as many things as other people have needed in their lives, right? Like I've never had, what is that called? Lifestyle creep, you know, where I've had that maybe to certain varying degrees, but I've never had it to where it was like my living expenses were such an exorbitant amount that it was just like, oh my God, how am I going to pay everything? I lived that for like a year, and I swore I would never experience that again. So I've always consciously tried to keep my expenses low and be able to live abundantly off of what I've made, you know what I mean? And so, you know, it's like knowing that abundance for me is having more than enough to do the things that I truly value. That's what abundance is. And for everyone, that number is different, you know, like I presented that example before where it was like, you know, I can't remember the names that I used, but Susie and Sharon, and like everybody has a different number. And for me, I've always been the person who was able to live on less, because I genuinely, like, for me, outside of the clothes, food, shelter, and having a place to, you know, live and stuff like that, like those, my basic necessities haven't always been like, I am blessed to say that I am, you know, I don't know, a person of nepotism. I'm a product of nepotism. I have inherited a lot of things and have had a lot of help from my family and friends are along the way. And so I'm not acting like I did all this by myself, because I didn't. But because of that, it's allowed me to ask a radically different question than I think other people have, which is not how can I afford to have more in order to fill in the blank, but it's more like how much do I really need in order to live richly? That's the question that it's posed for me, right? Rather than how much can I make, you know, how much do I really need in order to live a fully rich life, right? Rich for me, right? And so that's where I feel like I'm at right now. I'm still tending my same garden, which is the art, the music, the coaching, and, you know, the spiritual work and stuff like that, education work. And I haven't stopped believing in the seeds that I'm truly planting, but now I'm realizing that I was putting too much effort into the Lyft fund, or letting that fund my garden. And now I'm just becoming a better gardener, if that makes sense, you know, and listening to my body. And I think my body is a huge component. I love her because she speaks to me all the time and she's like, you're trying too hard. Like, that's a little bit too much effort. Oh, you're overthinking. Oh, you're doing it again. Like, you're putting too much on your plate, like one thing at a time. So I'm learning to ease off my tendency to burn myself out, you know, by listening to my own like things that I need and starting to have accommodations and like honor those accommodations, right? And so, you know, I'm just in a new season and I'm really excited because like this new financial awakening that I'm having and that I'm continuing to excavate is really giving me like more excitement and passion and energy towards the things that I am going to be building and moving towards. And I'm going to be like searching for new opportunities that is more in alignment. Well, not really searching as much as creating more opportunities, but also possibly looking at something else that I can do that replaces Lyft, that is in alignment with the work that I want to continue doing moving forward. I think that's all I wanted to share in this video. So yeah, if you're in a different phase where you're kind of pruning your own garden and deciding what is the funding factors in your life and where you can shift your energy, your effort, or your skill set, I am right there with you. I'm in the boat of like really deciding, okay, it's time for me to shift out of this. It's time for me to move into this next chapter of being who my soul has called me to be. And my soul has definitely called me to be a spiritual mentor for a very long time and to be an artist. And it's something that it's the moniker that I've used a lot in my life for a very long time. An artist and a Mosaic soul mentor for a very long time. But it's like now, like my body is like not letting me skirt by like another 5 years without, you know, actually moving towards this and stepping more fully into that, like those monikers of being a guide and being an artist that heals and brings more, you know, artistry to the world that is healing or enlightening or makes you move your body, or that makes you think deeper. You know what I mean? There's so many projects that I'm sitting on, literally. When I say hundreds, maybe even thousands. So I'm excited that I finally have, you know, some insight. I was praying, I was talking to my higher self, my divine team the other day. I was like, please just give me some insight. Give me some intuitive. And I woke up earlier this morning or late last night, and I was just ideating all these things and ideas. It's like, well, maybe you could do this. And it's like these new possibilities of thought processes had started landing in my mind, and I never even considered. And I was like, thank you, higher self, because I definitely kept feeling like I was in between a rock and a hard place. And my spirit was like, just calm down, chill out, all is well. Your well-being is always assured. There's always like many different gateways and many different open doors that you just have to be willing to walk through. And so that's where I'm at right now. And I'm excited to walk through new doors, to continue to move more fully into my divinity and more into who I'm meant to be on this planet. So yeah. My Mosaic Souls World membership is launching soon. It will definitely, I've dwindled it down and pared it down, and I'm just going to be focusing in on like the first 2 tiers. So if that's something that you want to learn more about, definitely check out and sign up for the waiting list at mosaicsoulsworld.com. It definitely will be sort of like a snail mail club, really, but it's going to be a little bit deeper than that, more transformational than that. So definitely check that out at Mosaic Souls World. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace, love, and light.